kind of teaching him that aspect of the game?
Yeah, pretty much. Like, I think it was more about, if anyone's done wrestling before, it's probably the hardest thing to do. Like, for that hour that you're training wrestling, it's super, super hard. And it's just taxing for the whole body. It's like the ultimate conditioning workout. And, St. George Dragons, they employed me as a wrestling coach and / conditioning coach. But along the process, just build really good relationships with the defensive coach, and then just analyzed the tackle and just got more into it, and just everything changed up. And now it's very, very footy specific.
Does that change? Has that changed kind of your role with what you do with the defensive side of things? Like, I mean, there's always, I guess, a little bit of that niggle and wrestle still in footy, right? But has it changed your program in how you kind of run the drills and kind of teaching it?
Yeah, big time.
Yeah,
the physical drill looks different, but the attitude and the working attitude and ethic in training remains the same. If there's someone slacking off, then you gotta punish them. The whole team's got to get punished, otherwise it's not the standards, this, not that. Yeah, in order for everyone to get better, you gotta lay down the law, sort of thing.
Yeah.
But it works. I mean, it works. Otherwise, if you do it works.
What kind of got you? How did that kind of come about? You kind of getting into the footy scene with that specific kind of role as a coach?
One of my mates, he was friends of a friend of a coach in St. George, and then made a couple of calls. He called me, and then we had a meeting. Then things aligned, and then we got the role down there. So I was traveling down there. But since then, I've done 2 years with the Dragons, and then I see pre-season with Sharks, and then now with Newcastle Knights.
Does the role, like, in terms of just even like with what you do and the work you do with the teams in terms of preparing for, say, that aspect of the game, did you have to kind of get an understanding of the game itself and where you feel like where you fit in terms of like what you were teaching them, or did they specifically want your skill set of what you knew from like wrestling and things like that and just bringing that on board, and then they kind of took that and kind of, you know what I mean, and kind of like connected it into the style of footy and how that kind of plays a part in the game as a whole?
Yeah, well, like, we got to gel together, we got to work together. It's just for footy. So different drills that some drills I had to take out because there was too much high risk of injury. And when it comes to contact, it's all about putting in the work, but then also keeping that risk of injury down low as well. I mean, a lot of footy players don't even know how to break fall down, so there's a lot of risk already. And I can't really spend time, or like as a coach, you can't really spend time teaching the boys how to break fall and stuff like that. Otherwise, there's a lot of other important stuff missed out.
Talk a little bit about your come up, man. I've always been interested to kind of get, way before UFC, just kind of the road to, I guess, the UFC and martial arts in general. Like, obviously, Luke gave me little scraps in here while we're training because I did tell him you're coming on. He's got a question for you too, which I'll ask you later. It was a bit of a funny question. It's about pull-ups, but and he's got me doing pull-ups now too. And I started laughing, and I was like, see James' video. He's been going hard about pull-ups, and he's like, yeah. So we had a little chuckle to each other, and he's been doing it now too. I know.
I started as a 13-year-old, as a young teenager, boxing. I love boxing. And then the coaches made us do pull-ups, push-ups, and just their body weight movement.
Yeah. And we forget, we forget like the most. I know. That's why we were laughing about it. I was like, it's so funny though. He's not wrong, because I'm like, these are the most basic things that we used to do as kids all the time that kept us fit and strong. And then, somewhere along the way, it's like you bring it back and you're like, people forget how much it actually works,
Oh, man, I think that's just human nature trying
to
now.
Do that with machine. So you're born in Auckland, is that right?
Oh, so I was born in the South Island of New Zealand.
Okay. Yeah.
And then spent some time. I've got grew up in a couple of places in New Zealand. And now south of Auckland, and then down to the South Island. The Queenstown's like a beautiful part of New Zealand. Some time down there. Then I moved over with mum and dad when I was 17 years old. Yeah. So I'm a born and bred Kiwi, but spent a very long time over here, and just really grateful for everything that's happened too.
Am I pronouncing it right? Manukau? Is that right?
Manukau, yeah.
Yeah, that's where my wife was born. Yeah, that's where my wife. Yeah, bro. Yeah, she's Fijian Indian, but she was born in Auckland, bro. Yeah. So I told her, I was like, oh, I'm having James Turner on. He's from She's like, oh, tell him he's where I was born. Yeah. So, I wanted to pronounce it right though. Yeah, so we have that little connection. Yeah. So I actually went for the first time for a wedding there, actually, for one of her cousin's weddings. 2 years ago, November, first time ever in Auckland. So that was pretty good. I've haven't been in that part of the world, but what was life like growing up for you, bro? I know there's tough parts of the neighborhood around there as well.
Yeah, so I didn't spend time in the city. I was like an hour and a half away from the city, so it was more it was in the country, it was in like rural areas. And this place where I got brought up was on like an orchard. So the town that I lived in, it was famous for exporting wine. So a lot of wineries, a lot of grapevines everywhere. And I grew up there and spent the first childhood years there, then my teenage years down in the South Island. But it was a good upbringing, and then had a lot of struggles as well. I know had a bit of every family has their struggle. But my old man had severe PTSD just from he went through like a hard traumatic experience, like pretty full on. And so he had PTSD, and me and my brother and my family, my mum, went to grow up with some challenges in our lives, and but we managed along the way, and went through some experiences and learnt a lot as well. And that's one of the reasons why I took to combat sports, was because of the my journey, my upbringing.
And what was that journey like? Like, at what point did you kind of know that this was something that you kind of wanted to do? Like, and what kind of got you into? I know that you kind of explained your experience growing up, but at what point kind of did you see combat sports come into the foreplay for you? Like, where I want to go try this. Was it something that your mom or you kind of just wanted to do, to try out? And is that how it kind of all started?
Well, through the experiences that I had, there's harder experiences and the challenges that we had growing up. I was very timid. I was a timid, shy, scared little kid, pretty much. I was pretty similar to what David Goggins explained as a kid. But I read his book, and it sounded like he had balls when he was a kid. He wanted to, still sound like he had balls to do something. But I was shy, timid, was a scared little kid. Used to stutter. Done a lot of things, man. I had a lot of limitations. When it comes to like school speeches, or if I got stood up by the teacher to ask a question or something, I would like freak out and run, So my fight or flight responses were freeze. Just gone out the door. I had a lot of time off school because I was afraid of going to school. I was just afraid of heavy social anxiety and interaction. I just didn't know how to cope with these things. But when all these things were going on and all the limitations that I had, I knew I was capable of a lot more. I was like, fuck, life isn't just going to be like this, So I used to love watching movies, and the movie where, someone's in a struggle, then at the end of the movie, they come out on top, sort of thing. So I had a lot of faith in my journey, my future. and I saw boxing, because boxing is quite big in New Zealand. David Stewart, Mike Tyson, you know, watching them on TV growing up, and just thought, you know, I just see Mike Tyson. Anytime they showed him on the news when he was training or fighting and stuff, I just, you know, really drawn to it. And some things really stick out for you as well. Like I picture Mike Tyson. They showed a little clip of him training for his next fight, and the little clip was him like 4:30 in the morning, and he's got his hoodie on and he's running, and it's raining hard and it's dark. And I'm like, that's what you got to do, you know, to become great. So yeah, when I started boxing, those are some things that I've done, like whenever it's storming outside or torrential rain, or you get my shoes on and then
put yourself in an uncomfortable position. Yeah. Love it.
Get a win, you know, it's going to toughen me up.
Yeah.
So I've still got that mindset now.
It's crazy though, like you were saying how you were like a timid kid, and you know, obviously with that's kind of the social anxiety and etc. But you were drawn to the idea of combat sports, where it's like complete reverse. You can't have it. I mean, you almost got to be strong and confident and you know, believe in yourself to be able to do something like that, right? So it's great. It's crazy how like there's elements of yourself that you probably don't even you don't realize that the ingredients of who you are till you kind of go down a certain lane and do something that kind of brings those qualities out in you, and you realize, man, like, you know, like I'm actually good at what, you know, I'm actually good at this, so I got a love and passion for doing this, you know.
I guess, man, like when I was young, I had to run away from a lot of shit. I run away, like whenever I got to a awful position, I run away, but kind of knew that it got worse and worse, sort of thing. So probably chose the most fearful sport there is out there.
Yeah.
Boxing. I remember my first session too, my first fight. Oh, far out. That was man, my heart was beating like super quick, but it was at the end of it, I didn't die. I lived.
Yeah.
And I could go try again the next day to build myself up.
Yeah.
And that happened day after day, I guess.
And then how did you kind of transition from boxing to, like, what drew you to like MMA and down that path?
I so moved over to Aussie. I had a couple of amateur fights, then moved over to Aussie when I was 17, and then had a couple of amateur kickboxing fights, and then come across some UFC tapes, old UFC tapes in the local town markets. And my brother bought them home. We watched them. It was like, how cool is this? We got a grappler versus a kickboxer, a sumo versus, you know, a kung fu master. Just different styles. It wasn't a movie. It was like real life. This was, it's pretty cool. So it was just really challenging. And I watched movies in the 80s and 90s that you know, like blood sport and stuff like that.
Classics.
To the middle and meet and challenge each other. So I was drawn to that. And one little guy in pajamas at the time, was carving everyone up. His name was Royce Gracie, and it just opened up the world for all of us, you know, to the rest of the world of the power of jiu-jitsu and grappling. And found a jiu-jitsu coach around the corner and just started training. And things happened from then.
And at what point did you kind of feel like you knew you could take this to the next level? Like, at what point did you, and we'll get to the point of like kind of getting into the UFC, but like, when did you feel like, man, I can actually make a life out of this and create something from what I'm learning?
So I was working as a bricklayer, a brickies labourer for starters. And then, but like I was training, you know, as brickies as a trainer, you got to wake up early in the morning, but I'll wake up earlier and then run and then go to work and then get back from work, quickly shower, then train for like a couple of hours afterwards. I had a really good work ethic, probably because of I wasn't talented, you know, I was the last person to learn something. The normal person will take like, you know, 5 minutes to learn a drill. It will take me an hour to learn the drill, but I'll stay back and learn that until I do get it right. But yeah, I think so. I was training and fighting, winning some fights, losing some fights. I was pretty passionate about it. I was obsessed about MMA, and this is like a new cool thing, sort of thing. And then had my hurdles along the way. Like there are many times, man, I was like, nah, stuff this, I'm just too much for me. I can't keep up with the training, works too much for me, and I'm tired, and I'm this, I'm now, I just want to rest, and it's way too hard, you know. But I had those battles in my head all the time, just like, you know what, really, whatever you're getting into, business or whatever other sport there is, I had those battles, those mind games, went to quit a number of times, but what actually made me stick in there was I got an opportunity to train with Mark Hunt, because we started using the same jiu-jitsu coach. And then I was a big fan of his. I used to watch him on TV and K1 and stuff like that. So cross over from K1 to Pride MMA, and we started training together. I was like, fucking, how sick is this, man? Like, one of my idols, he's you know, cross over MMA, and I'm helping him train for an MMA match. There's only like a small handful of us training it around that time. And he opened up the eyes for me about the opportunity that that combat sports of fighting can bring for an athlete. And so he brought me over to Japan a couple of times for his fights. And I was just blown away from it. Blown away from it. He was a huge star, and just a lot of people, like 60 to 80,000.
Yeah, it's crazy. Yeah.
You know, watching a single fight's huge. It's massive. It was bigger than the UFC.
Yeah.
So I came back, was like, man, you know, similar backgrounds, Polynesian. Yeah, and it just gave me the inspiration to be able to, you know, give this a go and give it a shot.
And then what was the road to the UFC like? Like, how did that all kind of come about for yourself? Was that just like, yeah, at what point did kind of that connection happen?
There was, so at the time I was kind of like probably in the prime of my fighting career. I was like, you know, doing ridiculous things in training, just like I was like a beast. I was a beast in training around that time. I was in my peak around that time before I got to the UFC. And then so I was carving up around the Australia, and then heard about UFC coming to Australia in the following year. I thought, okay, well, like, I'll keep my wins up, and then, you know, build a bit of name for myself, and I'm going to get there. I know I'm going to get there. They're going to have to, you know, stick me on there, because I'm the man in my weight division, sort of thing, you know. And then they're like a few months away from coming to Sydney, and then my brother Tama, he knew a friend of a friend. They had a connection to a manager, and he got a contract. Just had all the good things on my record to be able to get on there, I suppose. Yeah, had that first UFC fight.
And what was that like for you, man, going from like watching the tapes and then, you know, actually being, you know, and obviously idolizing some of the earlier fight, like, you know, you talk about Royce and a few others, and yeah, what was that like for you, man? You know, having the first UFC fight, but also growing up and watching the tapes and thinking, wow, this is cool. I'm sure, you know, as much as you have the vision to want to be there, it's still surreal, right? To look at something and be like, you know, and then actually end up in that situation yourself.
Yeah, it was wicked, man. It was really good buzz. At that time I was actually, my goal was set on Pride. That was my big goal. The UFC and Pride are around. I was like, I want Pride. I want to fight in Pride. I see Mark there and experienced it a couple of times. Like, from Pride is like the mecca of MMA. So had my goal on Pride, but then Pride went bust and UFC bought out Pride. Okay, well, UFC. So kind of like yeah, once I got in there, it was yeah, it was just a really good experience, and I got to meet a lot of people around the world and training different places around the world, and it was really good buzz.
And what are some of the, I guess, you know, some of the most, I guess, memorable moments for you being in the UFC, in terms of just even fighting, or even in just terms of just the feeling of you know, the feeling of kind of being in you know, probably the best stage in MMA?
So I was a huge fan of Mike Tyson.
Yeah.
Watching him on TV, right? He said, watch him walking up and down the cage, making his way to the cage, making his way to the ring, and then entering the ring, and it's like he is the man. I was like, far out, it'd be awesome to walk in this guy's shoes and get to feel what he's feeling, you know. Fast forward like many years later, I'm in MGM, Grand Garden Casino. I'm fighting Glover Teixeira, who's now
we'll get to that. It's such a trip out, huh?
Yeah. So he was in his prime back then, but he's but anyway, I look through the cage fence, and there's Mike Tyson. He's standing out of his chair, and he's looking at me walking up and down the cage. I'm like, wow. Yeah, full on.
How is kind of from what you know, just in terms of like the elements of like training and preparing for mixed martial arts, you know, with what it's like at the current state and what you see now as opposed to you coming up, what are some of the kind of significant changes or differences that you've seen from your time to now, even just with the training and things like that? Is much changed? Is it more the processes and systems in place as opposed to back then? Or
I think well, I haven't really been watching for the last few years on how MMA training's been is done actually. Back when I was training, and we used to train, we didn't really know. There wasn't really a formula made up yet because it's still kind of new, you know. So, but you see athletes doing the right things, like getting their recovery in order, you know, and then just having a lot of resources available now. Because back then, any resources, we had to find out the hard way, sort of thing. So I was getting hurt left, right, and center. But guys these days seem to take care of themselves a lot more better, I think, just from all the resources available.
Did you end up actually meeting Mike that at all? Yeah, you did. Yeah, that's crazy. Yeah.
Cool, man.
Yeah. It's just such a trip out, right? Like just from like it's from like both lenses, right? You kind of growing up and watching it, and then also like right there, you get to kind of meet him, you know, and it's just it's surreal, man. I mean, you know, I can only guess what it'll feel like, but yeah, it must be surreal though.
The big buzz.
What was your thoughts on Glover winning the belt, like at his age and being in at this stage of the career? What was your thoughts on it?
So I fought him 10 years ago, and he was like so Glover Teixeira, before he got to the UFC, a lot of people were talking about him that he should be in the UFC because he was just, you know, tearing up the stage outside the UFC. So he was one of the guys that arrived there late. Did the prime, and then I fought him when he's, you know, doing quite well. Then after me, he fought not long after he fought John Jones. He was in his prime, and then so that's 10 years ago. But it's kind of makes you think, hey, like, you know, 10 years later, he's 23.
It's
and then I don't know about that. I don't know.
Yeah, but I just think you probably, you know, you'd probably have a better understanding of it, but I just think that as the generations go on, I think you are going to see people going into their 40s competing, you know, whether it's combat sports or a lot of things. I just think that, like you were saying, the resources and then what's available to athletes to keep themselves prepared and looked after is just only excelling, right? Like it's only going to get better. So I just think naturally as human beings, we're going to when we get into our 40s and etc., we're still going to be in great shape, like mentally, physically, spiritually, and I just think it will slowly, you know, it's going to become a norm, whereas, you know, probably in those days it probably wasn't a norm going into that kind of that part of your career, right?
But there's sort of like, you know, give and take as well. Like you got fighters these days looking after themselves, and then fighters way back when they didn't. I mean, generations before then, they would have, you know, just trained on broken limbs and stuff like that. And would have, you know, those dudes would have been the hardest dudes. Would have been like, those guys were the real warriors, you know. So tough a mindset, and all the rest. But give and take sort of thing, you know.
You are.
broken. And then fighters these days have a, you know, good, healthy body, mind, and everything. But then, I don't know.
Yeah. It's almost like that old, you got to have that if they had that mentality with the resources now, it'd be a whole nother level, right? You know what I mean? Because the grind was different too, right? Like now you take your time, pick your fights and all this, whereas then you had to go and, you jump at the opportunity, right? And you just got to show your warrior mentality, right? So, you do a bit of strongman as well, right? Like you got into strongman and stuff.
Yeah, I got into that.
How did that come about?
Couple of years of it, a few years of it. I liked strength and conditioning and training. I loved it. And then here's strongman. When I got to learn about it, you can pick up these big objects and carry them, and it's not about just lifting in one direction. It's you got to do multiple things. It's a very challenging thing to do. So I loved it. Jumped in my first comp, come last. I wasn't good at it. I'm not good at anything. If I like something, I'll put my head down and then learn how to do it, and I'll just do it over and over and over. I'll do it like 10 times more than anyone else would. At the course of time, I got good at it, and then just loved it.
Yeah. How does what was it about it that you kind of got drawn into? What did you like about that part of the training?
A couple of things was the community, the people that were involved, the competitors, the people that were in the strongman. It's just friendly bunch, man. Cool, friendly bunch, willing to share ideas and advice, and just really cool people. But I also love the challenge, just like moving heavy objects and being able to do something that a lot of other people couldn't, sort of thing. Just I'm challenging myself. My frame is kind of built like a stick, and
compared to like those, some of those guys.
I'm pretty sure. If I put my mind to it, do it 1,000 times, I should be able to do it.
Yeah. When you and I think you were saying you do take a lot of time away from your life to talk to kids and kind of spread the message as well. I know that you've kind of mentioned a little bit on your IG and stuff that you kind of do talks and stuff like that, motivating talks. Is that right?
Yes, I do. So, bit of experience with young people, youth.
Youth. Talk a little bit about that. What got you? How did you kind of get into that, and what's that experience like? Because someone like yourself, you've obviously lived quite a interesting life to this date, right? With all bunch of things. So I'm sure there's a lot to share, but how important is that to you, and how did you kind of get into it, and what's that experience like for yourself?
I loved it because most of these kids that I talk to, they come from unfortunate circumstances, a lot of them are out of home care or foster kids, or the kids that have made the wrong decisions, things that have happened on their path, sort of thing. So I could relate to with my upbringing, and the most common ages where it's real challenge, 12, 13, 14, that transition from primary school to high school. You're trying to figure out who you are, how to fit in, all those things. So it's I guess with my experiences, I was able to connect with a lot of youth, and then give them a heads up about everything, that little hurdles that they might come across, and how to get over that, and share different experiences with them too. And I guess with my fighting background, my combat sports background, I was able to get him straight away. They're like, he's just a big tough guy, and he's just he's aggressive guy, and the way I speak, and when I open up about my story, they're like, oh, he's he's actually a nice guy.
I think it's sometimes that's really what it is, right? I think once they have an instant connection, you've drawn them in, and they listen. Sometimes that's what kids, I think, especially youth that come from troubled homes, or like you said, unfortunate backgrounds, they're just looking for that similar understanding, and I think once they know that you kind of understand, I think they draw in differently, as opposed to someone just saying something and if they can't connect with them, then it just kind of goes through one ear and the other, so but when you look back at your life so far, man, what comes to you, like, what kind of feelings come to you, and what's kind of your perspective on life, given kind of where you started, and I know you touched a little bit about childhood and some of the hurdles and challenges, and then finding boxing and then mixed martial arts and going into the UFC and competing at the highest level in the and obviously also just so many people just being like fucking fans of you as well, massive fans of you. What comes to your thoughts and perspectives when you kind of look back so far?
So when I look back to when I was a child to now, I think about the influences that I had in my life, and everyone has that power of influencing others. My influences were a number of people. The people I saw on TV, Mike Tyson, David Tua. My influences were my grandfather, mentors, so Mark Hunt, all these people along the way were guys that I looked up to, like, it made me kind of believe that, I can go this way or can go that way, sort of thing. So positive influences that changed me a lot. But if I didn't have them, it could have been a lot worse, or would have been a lot worse position than what I'm in now. And I think, being able to connect with people and share experiences and be able to, change someone's path too for the better as well. It's just communicating, I guess. There's something that I lacked when I was young, is my communication skills. Still have trouble with it. I'm still learning, sort of thing.
Yeah. I don't think I don't think you ever stop learning, in life. Yeah.
But it's pretty interesting world and everything with Zoom and video calls and just the way everyone's interacting. Yeah, communicating things across.
I guess based on your experience, and I know you kind of touched on it, you touched on like just how things could have gone a different way if you didn't have these mentors and these people to kind of look up to. What can you share to the people out there in terms of, being in those similar situations where, you of all people, I'm sure would understand. And I know for myself, from the community that I come from, it's relevant as well, where, it's so easy to kind of go down one path and you think that's the only path for you, but it takes a lot to be like, no, I can turn around and I can do something different. That's, different to what is a typical stereotype to what, the community or the background that you come from, I tend to do, generally, and be like, nah, I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to go down that path. I'm going to go on the path and actually create something beautiful in my life. What can you share based on your experiences with people that may be going through something similar or at that stage of their life, and what life gems can you give people just in general? Either they're trying to, it doesn't have to be combat sports, but just trying to be the best versions of themselves, I guess.
Probably think about the consequences. Think about it's kind of like when you're young, when you're trying to fit into the world and find your identity, and how can I do something to stand out? How do I fit in? It's being able to keep connection to your elders, keep connected to your elders and those that are around you. They can influence you well. It's a hard thing, because when you're young, you're like, they don't understand. Don't understand what you're going through, and like you're an elder person. You're like, I know exactly what you're saying. But yeah, listen to your elders, listen to the old fellas, because they have experience and you can't beat experience. Yep.
What gems can you share to people just in terms of life, in terms of just wanting to reach your goals, and the kind of mentality you need to have in terms of consistency and putting in work? Like, what can you share to people about, like, based on your experiences, some qualities to have, or some things you need to have in order to build that kind of life for yourself?
Make those goals clear as day. If the goal isn't clear, then when you come across a hurdle, you won't really get yourself through that hurdle. But if your goals are clear as day, very clear, you have like clarity on where you're going to actually be, I think you'll do anything to get you there. And I think that helped with my fights as well. Like, I'll walk into a fight where I'm winning this fight, and I've pictured my hand being raised that many times. Next minute I had the fight, and I had my arm snapped or shoulder popped out or something. But I'm like, I'm still getting there. So I had that mindset. My goal was like clear as day that I was going to get there. I was like obsessed about getting there. So that definitely helped me get through those hard times, those hurdles, those walls that you come across.
What was motivating you, even during those times you were actively fighting and just in life? Like, what were some of the things that you really relied on that motivated you and inspired you to keep going?
Number of things could be like music, role models, mentors, having that clear picture, having. I didn't journal when I was fighting. I wish I did, but I have like another week's time, I'm going to be in this position, or another month's time, I'm going to be in that position. So it was like, goal set in my head, but I wish I had it written down. Would have been, would have saw a lot clearer. Man, you can go on and on, but I really appreciate you giving your time, man. I know it's a Sunday, you probably want to chillax, but I really do. Me and a mate, gonna catch up with a mate and do some pull-ups.
Yeah. That was Luke's. Man. You're gonna start a whole movement. I could feel it, man. I could feel it. I was like,
it works, man. It works.
Yeah. It's crazy.
It works. It's, or like you think about being a boxer. How many times do you do this? Session, You do it like 1,000 reps.
Yeah.
And then throughout the day, you're on your devices. You're making the meals. You're doing work in front of you. So everything's shoulders are rolling forward. Head's kind of reaching a little bit forward. Yeah.
So it actually felt good when I did it as well. Because for that reason, you always hunched forward, right? Like you were saying, you always hunched in. So just to be able to open it up again, it actually felt good. And he's just, man, if your posture isn't good, you have the same common problems like everyone else. I mean, the common problem for boxer is the brachialis and the forearm. Bicep to the front of the deltoid and to the pec minor. They're all the same issue. Yeah.
From that rolling forward and everything's in front taking too much load.
Yeah. It's crazy.
Yeah, so longevity, man. Longevity.
Yeah, for sure. And I appreciate that, brother. And I appreciate you, man. My platform is about celebrating people in our culture, and you're someone, man, that's done a lot just for the sport, but also I think for people, man. You talk about the Mike Tysons and the Royces, the people you inspired, that you were inspired by. It's reciprocated, man. I'm sure a lot of people, sit there and be inspired by what you've done, and being around your presence and knowing, hey, man, like based on what your life was like and what was given to you, you took it and instead of having a built-in excuse, you created something, special for your life and the people around you, and I think that's an amazing story in itself. And I think a lot of people, including myself, where we come from migrant backgrounds where, the worlds are different and the countries are different, but I think that the struggle and the things, the elements around it that you're trying to get through are very similar, in its own entity. So I appreciate you giving your time, man, and really appreciate what you've done, even just in the sport, but also just what you're doing right now with the youth and still being kind of, involved in sharing your experiences. I think that's pretty awesome. And those people are very lucky to have you as well. And you know, it was absolute honor, man. I was really keen to have a chat to you, and I'm glad we made it happen, and I'm glad you gave me your time as well. And you know, I'm sure we'll chat again sometime. But yeah, just wanted to say, you know, we appreciate you and thank you, man.
Appreciate it, man. Thanks a lot, man.
Nah, appreciate it. Have a good one, brother. Enjoy those pull-ups.
We'll do.